Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Florida Man, Season 1, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, we only get little tidbits here and there, but I do like that we I guess this was like the beginnings of when Iris recognized, Mike's issues. Either he kept them so well hidden and this was our first time seeing the ugly truth, or maybe he had it under control to some extent, but when they were on vacation in Las Vegas, it's maybe he chose Las Vegas for a reason. But either way, that's when she really starts seeing the ugliness of it, and I'm sure that's where, I guess that was kind of essentially the downfall of the relationship. Because even being in Florida right now is kind of triggering her about some of the memories she had about watching him being 3 o'clock in the morning, gambling, and telling her because she was I don't want to be that person who has to drag you back to the room at this point away from the table because you want to come down here and gamble. He's well, don't be, just give me one more hand. It's you could tell the moment she's oh, let's go upstairs for some sexy time, and he was so focused on the table. So that speaks volumes. I also love once again, how they connect stuff. That the plane that Buzz was looking at, staring at the sky last episode, is the same plane she's on. I was I love how they do stuff like that. That's so interesting. So, picking up with the Buzz stuff, we find out what happened. I was actually surprised to find out Buzz is the one that shot the crane guy. I was because the whole point was, Buzz doesn't have a gun. We don't trust him with a gun. So either Buzz carries that on his own, because, that was when he was a cop, so he might have his own personal gun now. Once again, it's Florida. That's the whole joke and everything. So he probably that's probably his personal gun, so they probably don't know that Buzz is strapped. But he ended up killing the guy because the guy was hey, I'm going to wait for your boss to come back up, and we're going to renegotiate this stuff. Because he didn't think Buzz was going to pull the trigger on him. Did, splattered his brains on the crane, ended up body dumped in the water. And obviously, Sonny and Ray are a lot more calm about it, but Mike is what? No. This is severely screwed up. It's well, should we take it to the place? And it's wait, what? You have a place you dispose of bodies? And Sonny's no. That place is kind of too far away. I don't want you driving with a dead body. So I'm this definitely isn't the first time they've disposed of a body or something, which, why am I too surprised? They're dirty cops, so I don't know why that's come as so much of a surprise, but it's one thing when you're hey, trafficking and getting into drug business and stealing stuff, but it's another thing to be straight up a murderer. So that's what it seems like it's implying, they have the place they dump stuff. I did like Buzz's idea. It's well, I wanted the Porsche, but at the very least, we could put the body in the back of the Porsche. He's because I do feel I am a little responsible, so I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Mike's a little responsible? You're screwing the pooch on this. But Sonny's yeah, but you're the one that wanted to move things ahead quickly. Sonny's the one that kind of wanted to plan things out, because his whole thing is Mike's rodeo rather than Sonny. So Sonny does want to take over it later on again, but Mike keeps claiming that he's in control, but that's the one thing you don't want to, because that's the thing. Mike thinks he's so in control, and that's his gambler tendency, thinking right, things are going wrong, but all I need is just one thing to go right, and I can turn my luck around. That's that gambler mentality of the big win is just around the corner. I can almost taste, I can feel that gold. All we need is just for things to go right for us. So they've got to clean up that situation. Before they could, I guess they disposed of the body because they were the body's at the bottom of the water, and then it floats to the surface. It's and I even love Ray being yeah, there goes the whole, just a series of misdemeanors that we were talking about before. It's yeah, we're going into full-blown felony murder. So, Mike wants to clean up the crime scene, so he goes to try to steal supplies from the motel, but the wife, it's no, and she immediately knew what kind of thing he was cleaning up. It's it's not a spill in the room, and it's how much do Benny and his wife know about Mike? She already knew he was trouble, and Mike's Benny's who cares? His money's good. But she knew that trouble would find their way, so she ends up showing up there. She ended up helping clean up the crime scene. Even later on with the whole, jumping ahead a little bit, but the Dutch situation popping up. When that happened, she was immediately nope, Mike's not here. He moved out. It's why are we not telling him about Mike? Why are we lying to him? It's because a friend of Mike is definitely not a friend of ours. But the problem was Dutch immediately noticed that the the key to room 2 was gone, which Benny already said that's Mike's room. So, but anyway, let's circle back a little bit. So her cleaning up the crime scene. You had Deli dealing with Eric, which we find out the moaning voice, because I had my theories about who the moaning voice was. Turns out it's his dad. His dad has dementia, and he doesn't have anyone to look after his dad, and he wants to spend time with his dad, so it's like 2 birds, 1 stone, bring him to work with me, but he wanders off, so I have to handcuff him cuff him, because it's like his leg is cuffed to the bed. So it's like, oh, because at first I was like, this seems kind of creepy, and even loved Deli being like, no, I'm going to, this is fine, whatever, but Eric explained it all, which she bought them more time because she called the police on Eric, and it's like, oh, who was that? And just a child molester. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, I wasn't out of pocket being like, yeah, that's what that whole Eric thing was. I mean, it seemed pretty obvious, but I was like, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I'm like, specifically the phrase of like, I'm not allowed to be around children anymore stems from like, because I was like, yeah, just because you're a felon with me, you wouldn't be able to be around kids. The only reason why you wouldn't be around kids is because you're a registered sex offender, So I figured I was like, okay, so that's what that was. But I think the reason why she hesitated, because she kind of felt somewhat bad, because a lot of like that talk with Eric resonated with her. So that's why she's just kind of like, yeah, he's just some child molester. It's like, but there was some weird, like, good advice and talking she got through. Like, she felt something when she talked to him, and knowing that he is trying to be a better person. It's like, hey, I just want to spend time with my dad. So that's the benefit of like, bringing him to work with me and stuff like that. So I guess she kind of felt bad, but she had to kind of remind herself, he is a child molester. He's not a good person, so who cares? Which I think she dives into that mentality, I think, a little bit better than Mike does. Like, the thing is, it's ironic because I think that's where we kind of get in. I think this is going to be one of those stories, and kind of showcases that, where a lot of our key cast are not good people in any shape or form. Like, once again, Mike is in that position where he's a person that does bad things, but he doesn't think he's a bad person. And that ends up being something kind of a message at the end of the episode, especially with him and Ray Ray, but we'll get to that later. But it's like, yeah, Mike struggles with that. And I think everyone else kind of sees himself as bad people. Even Deli's like, oh, I'm a bad person, but I accept that. Because it might be the thing of like, yeah, most people are bad people. It might be very like pessimistic in that regard. Or it could just be like, I at least recognize I'm a bad person and we're bad people, but, it doesn't make us like the scum of the earth, terrible human beings. So it's just like Mike refuses because he wants to at least try and pretend like he's like, hey, I'm a good guy who is put in some very unfortunate situations, and that calls me having to do some bad things, but I'm not a bad guy. The bad things I do don't have to define me. It goes back to that conversation, should you be defined for the worst thing you did or every other element, every other day in your life? But that's also the thing of like, well, Mike screws up a lot. So, but it's like, how far can you like excuse kind of those worst days, those bad things you do before you're just like, no, you can't just like, your bad days do define you because you have so many of them. You have more bad days than good days. So that ends up being a whole thing. But I mean, obviously Mike isn't down for the whole murder thing, but he was talking to Deli about like, yeah, someone died because of what we wanted. And Deli was kind of like, well, he died because of what he wanted. But, but it's like, she was kind of nonchalant about it. And obviously her tune changes when it's like Dutch is involved, because Dutch is, so we do find out. So it was in fact, because that's why I was so confused. I was like, we kind of skated over like the Gil's death thing, but it's like, that's why I brought it up last episode. I was like, maybe I'm just being stupid and Moss did kill him. And it's like, yes, he did. Granted, as they said, like, oh, Moss doesn't do anything to get his hands dirty. He gives it to someone else, and they think it's Mike. The person he got to do it was Dutch. So it's like, that's what Deli's worried about, because when she ran into Dutch, it's like, oh, he's here. He's the type of person to handle stuff. Because the moment, I figured he knew about the truck the gold, because he was like, hey, like, looking into like rumors and yellow trucks. So I was like, okay, so you're the one Moss got to look into Gil's story. That's why Gil's dead, because Dutch couldn't find the truck, and because sadly it gotten impounded by then. So because of the sinkhole and everything, so that's why he couldn't find it when it was taken. So they thought Gil was BSing. And it's like, but once again, it's like when someone owes you money, Like, I thought the whole point was to keep them alive because dead men can't pay you, but it's like, I guess it's up to a point of like, yeah, we can't let you keep getting away with not paying us, so we gotta send a message to anyone else that owes us something that you pay up or you die. So I guess he was just meant to be that message, or maybe it's just because it also goes into the whole thing of like Moss is an idiot, he's kind of short-sighted, so he might have called for that, and it was just like, right, you weren't thinking in the long run, or maybe it's just like, not only were you trying to buy yourself more time, you lied to me and concocted this whole gold coin story. So poor Gil. Once again, even though he was telling the truth, it's just because unfortunately the vehicle fell into a sinkhole. So, but focusing on Dutch, which I kept being like, why? I was like, I knew who the actor was. I was like, oh yeah, I recognize that actor. The thing I always go back to is Blue from the TV show Happy, which is a great show. Highly recommend you check it out. Even though it was canceled after its second season, I think it's still worthwhile checking out. It just won't have a conclusive ending. It has a cliffhanger ending. But either way, I recognize him from that, but I was like, there was something more recently I saw him in. I completely forgot he was in The Walking Dead. He was Pope in The Walking Dead. I completely forgot about that. But more recently, I was like, but there had to be something like even more recent, and it was Tulsa King. I completely forgot he was in Tulsa King. So that's the most recent thing I'd seen him in. But yeah, I love him looking for Mike, and he ran into Deli. I guess because he didn't recognize Deli, so it's like, I guess because she knows about Dutch, but I guess it's like maybe by reputation and maybe she's seen him. Maybe it's a thing of they've bumped into each other like maybe once or twice, enough that he wouldn't recognize her. But, you know, that, and she ends up bringing this up later on the mic. It's like, yeah, he knows I was in that room that you're supposed to be in or whatever. So if he finds out like, hey, there's this lady I ran into this motel room and this is what she looks like. Oh, she sounds a lot like my girlfriend, Deli, who's supposed to have been murdered a couple days ago. So it's like, that would have been a whole issue. And that was what I was kind of concerned about. So I was thinking it was interesting how she immediately kind of was like, whoa. And she even got the gun out of, like, I figured she knew like something was off. He was looking for Mike. But I guess it's like she immediately probably took a second before she fully recognized who he was. But that's why she got the gun on her. I thought he was probably going to know. I guess it was for our benefit. The mirror showing like the gun, like her kind of reaching for the gun behind her. I was kind of worried that he might, I guess with the angle he was at, he couldn't see, because the door's right there, so maybe he couldn't see the reflection of the mirror, so he couldn't see that she was like handling the gun behind her. So all of this is coinciding at the exact same time. Like, once again, Iris is in town. She went to go see Patsy and is trying to get Patsy's help to help her track down Mike. But the moment, like, you know, Iris kind of made it clear, like, hey, he's mixed up in something, I want to help. And it's like, yeah, but are you coming after Mike? Because, like, wait, Mike doesn't know you're here. And she's like, no. But it's like, are you trying to help him as a cop or as Iris, as someone that was part of his family? And it's like, as both. But for Patsy, it's like, I can't be a part of that, because it's like, for her, it's like, she even said it, like, her brother, it seems like he left Florida when she was 12. And like I said, maybe, because the way he was talking to his niece, it sounded like he pops back in every once in a while. But it's like, right, you've left and now it's taken all these years for you to kind of come back. I don't want to chase you off. I want you to stay here. But if you get in the way, but if, like, you know, Mike is ever an issue and puts her and her family in danger, but Mike's like, no, it's not going to come to that. It will exactly come to that, because unintentionally Mike and Deli have drawn a lot of trouble to their lives. I mean, it's Mike saying what he said, and like a lot of like him opening his mouth to Gil set a lot of stuff in motion, and then also him and Deli having that conversation about Florida. Once again, she didn't know he was from Florida until they had that conversation. Her coming down here trying to chase after that gold from Gil. Like, a lot of that gold is very like Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, where like it's very much like a curse, and how much of a drag that's been on how much of an effect it's had on all these people. Once again, it's like which was the chicken and what was the egg in all of this. I think arguably you could be like, the gold that Mike was the finding the gold coin as a kid was that because of what that kind of ended up shifting and defining so much of his life. And once again, he started all this by telling Gil about the money, and that set a lot of stuff in motion. But it started, once again, it was meant to be like with his gambling addiction and all of that and who he was. It was supposed to start there, but it is also kind of technically the start of the story of like it played into the series of events of that was patient zero, that was ground zero for what would eventually turn into these circumstances over this like past couple of days or whatever. Iris ends up meeting the guy. I love that when she went to go check on Gil's boat, she ended up walking right past Ray Ray because Ray Ray had gotten a call to get out of there. She got the security cameras and she saw Mike like the other day, like just today at the boat, but then also going back a couple of days, saw Mike and Deli, which is like, no, Deli's supposed to be dead. Like, what's going on between Mike and Deli? Like, wait, are they planning something? Like, what's this all about? So now things are complicated. Now she's going to be even more interested in finding, because she didn't know what Mike's part to play in all this was, like what he was doing in Florida. But now it like, well, obviously she's getting part of the story, which is like what she's picking up on her own and the theories that she's probably crafting on her own about how this all plays out. Because all of this is kind of interfering with their plan, because their next plan was, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to float the truck to the surface, pull out all the gold, dump it back in there, and let it get paved over in the next couple of days. So we have that. Another wrinkle into this story, because we keep getting bits and bits of it. It's the Caitlin Fox of it all, because I keep forgetting talking about it because it is like a smaller portion of the episode. But she ended up looking into Mike's circumstances, found out that he didn't work for who he claimed to when they talked, because she kept trying to reach him over and over. And it's like, if Mike had probably reached back out to her, to be fair, it was like she was a means to an end, but now that's kind of blown back on him. And now she ended up going to a cop friend of hers to run his number to find out about him. So that's kind of another worry. Once again, you have the Iris of it all sniffing around. You have the Dutch situation. It's like, okay, so let me tell Dutch what I told Moss. You even have like Sonny being like, hey, you leave, get on a boat with Deli, don't come back, and I'll make sure you get your share. But Mike doesn't trust his dad. There's so much unresolved BS between them. There's so much stuff there that Mike can't trust his dad. But even to the point, Deli's like, he'll probably leave us some. Yes, he'll probably screw us over and rob us blind. But at the end of the day, he'll at least help us out some. Because I want to say I think it was Deli that was suggesting like, right, your dad likes doing this with you. Like there is a little bit of like, for the first time, like there's so much complications and animosity there that it's like, yeah, we're doing a little crime together, but it's kind of fun. Like this is the closest we've had to father-son bonding in so many years. This whole wackadoo adventure situation we're in brought us together and kind of ends up being kind of a second chance to kind of bury the hatchet and kind of find a way forward. Granted, that's not going to be easy. They have all these sarcastic remarks towards each other, but it's never like they're not sitting down and being completely honest with each other. And we probably won't get that till a little bit later on in the season when they just sit down and talk. So, but Deli wants out, and it is kind of ironic and sad that she is what, like Mike has suggested that back in episode 2, but Deli's like, no, I'm not going in it. For one, she was like, I'm not going without you. And also, well, fine, I'm not going to work in like a restaurant or whatever in Venezuela. I'm going to like see this through. But the problem is that what she didn't account for is Mike's gambler need to win. That it's like, no, I'm not going to like walk away with nothing, because this has been so ingrained in him, and especially the gold coins. Like he's been like seduced by all of this, and it's sent him down the path in life he's going. And even to the point, Sonny's like, right, you don't know what you did. You blew off more than you can chew. And she's like, I didn't start this. He's like, yeah, but you lit the fuse. For her, it's like, I'm just in the middle of whatever BS is going on between you and Mike, which he's like, you say that, but you love the drama. It's like, and even kind of references the Romeo and Juliet, Bonnie and Clyde of it all. It's like, and we know how their story ended. So that's what she's worried about. And obviously, I think it's kind of a neat reflection, considering, once again, the beginning of the episode where we had the Iris, and even like, because there's 2 different scenes with Iris about the whole her and Mike's past. So we're getting that at the same time. There's complications with Deli and Mike, where it's like Iris was trying to pull him away from the table. Deli's trying to pull him away from this job, but his that gambler in him, like he can't let go until he wins, you know. So I thought that's kind of a neat parallel in the episode, past and present, that Mike still has that itch that, you know, because being obviously a gambler, having a gambling addiction, like any addiction, isn't a thing of, oh, it goes away. It's like, no, it's always going to be ingrained in you. It's just a matter of having the tools necessary to not get triggered and drawn in by your addiction, to have all the necessary tools needed to push back into it and not go down that slippery slope. But Mike hasn't properly equipped himself with the right tools for it. As well as like the working for Moss circumstances don't allow for that as well. So, and I love how all this episode, because the title of the episode as well, all of it revolves around just one more day is all we need. Just one more day. It's like, now you're going to need more than one day because everything went sideways. Mike tried to deal with Dutch, which he was kind of like, you know, slowing that roll. Like he actually convinced Dutch, like, hey, I'm doing exactly what Moss said. I haven't reported in because Moss, as you say, is a fucking idiot. And if I give him part of the story, he'll fly off the handle. So I'm going to handle things. Don't worry about it. But the problem is Ray shows up because Dutch had been following Mike before Mike found out who he was. And it's like, right, he followed me to Patsy's house and stuff like that before I found out like I was being tailed. So he doesn't know Patsy lives there, but it's still he followed me there. So there's kind of an issue there. And so Ray's like, right, I can't let him live if he's a danger to you and your sister, because it's like, right, you guys are family, because you're family to someone that's important to me. You're also kind of family to me too. So I'm gonna look out for you kids, because this is also what Sonny would want. You know, you are a threat to both of his kids, regardless of how he may act around it. He does love his son. It's just like there's just so much unresolved bullshit between them. And I love the entire time Ray's trying to kill Dutch, who's locked up in the bathroom, drops his phone in the porta potty, drops his phone in the toilet, and I was like, oh boy. I don't know. I guess he thought, I don't know what he was planning on doing with the the lighter. I don't know what he was planning on doing with that. I guess he was hoping like maybe he could like, I don't know, burn away some, or maybe he was trying to use the light to kind of find his phone and his shit. Either way, I don't know if it's just like a whole bunch of like, maybe propane from the shit or whatever, blew up like a rocket. And I love the only thing that survived was the phone, which Moss is calling. So it's like, cool, we're going to need another day to figure that mess out. We catch up with Clark Gregg's character after the prison break, went to a laundry place. That mom, why she was so calm about that situation. She's like, no, you go ahead and take it. I'm sorry, but you kind of need to get, like, she was so calm in that situation. It's like, oh, you're going to probably need it more than us. I guess it's a thing of, I don't know if you're crazy or not, so I'm going to try and talk to you as civilly as possible, because I don't want to alarm you and potentially set you off to the point you might kill me and my child. So we're going to keep this super copacetic, which, you know, he's kind of like, trauma dumping on her, because he's like, right, I'm not a bad guy. This isn't who I am. I try to, you know, I'd spend a lot of time at work. I wasn't really there. You know, I took my wife's advice. This could be a great vacation that obviously my kids are going to remember, not all for best reasons. Because like, oh, cool, dad went to jail. Oh, also, dad broke out of prison. Once again, how you're going to explain that to your wife and children? Because I kept being like, I couldn't remember, like, because last episode I was like, does he have multiple children? It's like, yes, he has 2 children. I couldn't remember if it was just 1 or 2, but either way. How do you, like, what do you do? Because your life is fucked, because you literally broke out of prison. So it's like, how are you going to remedy this situation? Not unless you disappear with your family, which I guess will eventually connect his story with, I mean, their story's already connected with Mike, because Mike took his gun, and it's like, once again, the series of events, like, he still went down his own path. It's like no one told him to go get a gun and buy it off some shady kid offering it to him, but he was so weird about needing a gun, and that set so much emotion, he ended up buying a gun with a body on it. So it's just like, once again, the dominoes in this show is wild and insane, just how everything plays out. But eventually those stories have to kind of connect. They're still separate enough for right now, but there's also the second body that's kind of dropped. Technically third if you count Gil, But even Sonny said it himself. He's like, oh, if you think Gil's the first person that's died because of this gold. And it's like, right, it's been a thing for... I'd assume the gold coin is also from the same, like gold that Mike found all those years ago. I'm sure it's all kind of cut from the same... Like, not cut from the same thing, but it's like, it's all from the same treasure. So, it's like, yeah, that's decades of like, yeah, there's probably like been plenty of deaths associated with this. Gil just happened to be the latest one, and now the crane operator guy, and now Dutch. So that's 3 dead bodies. One at least has a direct connection to Moss, has been talking to Moss. He was even saying like, oh, do I need to come down there myself? It's ironic too, considering like Dutch was like, yo, leave me alone. Never call me for any favors anymore. You're not your dad. You inherited his money and all this, but you're not him. You're pathetic. And now this is going to force Moss to come down the floor to himself because he couldn't get in contact with Mike. Now he can't get in contact with Dutch. So it's like, cool. He's going to come, like, Moss has even more reason to come looking now. So we got to do this quickly. Once again, this all needs to happen before the hole gets filled in the next couple of days. And it's just like, oh, everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. So where all this ultimately ends up taking us is definitely going to be interesting, with so many traps waiting around for you. Like I said, the Moss situation. I actually completely forgot to talk about the Andy of it all too, because he's now no longer working with Sonny. I even love him being like, yeah, like he brought me on, knew I was kind of a straight shooter, that I was, I wasn't going to cover, because they have their thing where it's like, I guess prior to now, Andy's never been kind of told to look the other way. He's always been an honest cop. And it's like, oh, Sonny said he wanted that for me. He's like, he should be treating me like his son, which I love. His wife is like, you've met his son. I think he is. It's like, yeah, he is treating you exactly the same way he treats Mike, but it also showcases like Sonny is willing to kind of jeopardize that for Mike's sake, because despite everything, like I said, he loves his son. So when Andy pushed him again about, was that sketch of Mike, and he said he was hesitant, but he just said no, because he's still trying to protect his son, because there's so many other parts at play here, especially with the deli of it all, which is also what he was trying to explain to Patsy, that if it's like, yeah, if that guy, the longer his mom is trying to keep him on life support, even though it doesn't seem like he'll wake up, probably will, like I said, just for the sake of this crazy story. But Patsy, to help out Mike, is willing to convince the mom more so to let him go and pull the plug. So that'll be one less loose end. But it's like, there's no way that loose end is too intricate and too, not intricate, but intrinsic to this whole thing. So there's no way they're just going to let that go. Like, he's going to have some miraculous recovery, or just some details or something related to him will ultimately connect back to Deli in some shape or form. Maybe. I don't know. My thought last episode was maybe Iris and that storyline will end up connecting in some shape or form, but maybe not. Like I said, I also threw out the possibility maybe he just ends up waking up. So it's not, what's also going to be interesting and complicated is if Iris and Andy kind of meet up, because they're both trying to handle this from like, well, she's still got a little bit more in her of like, hey, I want to protect Mike, but it's also like, I know you're up to something shady, but when the time comes, like, can she arrest Mike? Andy sure as hell will. I think he's kind of got to the point that maybe he'd even throw Sonny under that same boat as well. Who knows? Like I said, just so many everything is already going wrong, and there's so many threads that could make this whole thing spiral out even worse, because it will get so much worse before it even gets a monochrome better, because for every step forward they take, there is like 3 or 4 other things setting them back. So how this all plays out going forward into the next episode is going to be definitely interesting to see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.